You are listening to the Add Water and Stir podcast, where we have candid conversations about fostering, adopting, and parenting children of color. I am adoptive Black mom of the blog of the same name, and
I'm Mimi from the blog MimiRobinsonOnline.com.
If you're new to our show, please check out all of our previous episodes on our site, www.addwaterandstirpodcast.com, or iTunes or Stitcher or your favorite podcast app. You've tuned in to our special series on the show, This Is Us, and today we're talking about episode 16, Memphis. So the mini recap is Randall and William take a road trip to Memphis where Randall learns about William's past. So before we dive in, Mimi, any opening thoughts about the show?
This episode was Black. I'm Black. I'm blackity. I'm Black. And so I loved it all because we had talked on a previous episode about we hope that they dive a little bit more into William's backstory. So I'm so glad that they did that.
It is a very Black episode that also kind of touches on that issue of okay, well, what does it mean to be Black, and can you be Black and raised by white folks?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this episode has it all: Black love, Black family, Black fatherhood, adoption. There's so many poignant moments to unpack. So why don't we go ahead and dive in? This episode continues the throwback motif, but of course its focus is on William's origin story. So it opens up with Beth and Randall bickering in the doctor's office about Randall and William taking a road trip all the way to Memphis. We learn that Randall has had a full-on breakdown that resulted in a hospitalization and some time off from work. Beth, who is sporting her natural curls in this episode, is not feeling this trip at all, and Randall is like, yeah, we're going to Memphis. So that's kind of where we start the show.
You know, this whole scene was interesting to me because Beth and Randall have this awesome relationship and they even fight nice. Not only do they go to a psychiatrist to have them help mediate through the discussion, they're both engaged in the discussion. Even when they have a little tiff with each other, they are respectful. They listen to each other. They let each other finish their sentence. And even the psychiatrist has to say that they're adorable. And it's really true. The other kind of not funny thing, but William was sitting outside the office looking like a little kid waiting on parents to decide is he in trouble or not.
What's going to happen to him, right? Yeah, he is. And then he gets the little hand bump from Randall and it's like, yeah, we're going. So in the next scene, we see William and Randall getting ready to go. Beth is packing lots of food for them because, Black folk and road trips. And
to me, this was kind of radical because they asked for help. They came to a decision together. They accepted the decision and Beth is like, okay, I have already stated I really don't want you to go, but we have made this decision together. And so now I'm going to do what I can to make sure it's successful. That is beautiful.
It
and
is.
The reason why I say that's radical, because we don't see kind of those notions, one, of Black people getting mental health in that way. Mm-hmm. But then also we have come to a decision together, and whatever it is, even if it's not the one that I want, we are going to support it. We want to make sure that it's successful.
Yeah, and we also see healthy confrontation, right?
Yes.
So it is very clear that they are in disagreement. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there is this resolution of what's going to happen next and an acceptance of it as well. And so it's beautiful. It's just all that good Black love. So William quietly says goodbye to the kids. And Beth, and he and Randall head off, and Randall is all uptight. He is like, we're doing this old school, meaning that essentially he's been the AAA.
He has all the maps.
He's got maps. And he is like, I want you to be my navigation and, stay one step ahead of me. And because, with Randall, everything is like, well, we should be there by 9:06 if we leave right now. Mm-hmm. And William is like, this is not that kind of trip. So
Exactly.
he's like, let me see the maps, throws them out the car. And that kind of kicks off this conversation about Randall confessing that he has always been a bit uptight. He's always trying to be perfect. And that, he recognizes that this is a personal flaw that Jack tried to help him with. And now Randall is also trying to help him. And so you kind of see these interesting parallels where they start talking about Jack and how he was a father to Randall.
Well, it's kind of cool that this whole thing is predicated on a road trip. And, the road trip is a motif in cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It's the time where people get to know each other. And I had mentioned before, I felt like Randall and William, even though they were living together, I feel like they didn't really know each other very well. It was kind of a strange dynamic to me. So I was happy to see that they're going to be together for such a long time, and then they can start to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah. So we also learned that William never knew his father because his father was killed in World War II while his mother was pregnant, and she ends up raising him alone. And I guess in early adulthood, she leaves him in order to go care for her own mother. We kind of get the sense that William is a bit of a mama's boy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
More than a bit, a lot.
A bit of a mama's boy.
And not only is he a mama's boy, he's an air quote good boy too. Like he really tries to kind of stay the straight and narrow. He's artistic. He's a writer. He's a poet. He's a musician. And he really wants to lead this very artsy life, but a really kind of clean life. And he wants to make his mother proud.
And I love the parts, showing William with his mom. Again, these are things that I'm just so happy to see on the television screen. His mom is swinging around her baby, and she is just so in love with this little person. And yes, it's unfortunate that her husband doesn't get to participate in this, but she has put her all into William. You can tell that. And that's why their relationship is so close. And it was a big decision for her to leave William by himself there because they had been together for so long and they were two peas in a pod.
Mm-hmm. So interspersed with these throwback images, Randall and William chat about Jack, and they get kind of pretty deep. And William eventually says, I want to go to where your father is to pay my respects. And he's like, oh, that's a day out of the way. And typical like middle-aged black man road trip kind of talk. And he's like, yeah, we're not on a clock. I need you to take me to meet your father. He goes and he thanks Jack for raising Randall and, says he did a good job. And he goes back to Randall and is like, I like your dad. I like him. He's a good man. And that scene ends with kind of Randall not really seeming to kind of know what to make of the fact that William has really kind of said, I know that you were raised by someone else. He did an amazing job and I love him for it. And there's just so many beautiful scenes in this episode.
Yeah, let's talk about that in terms of adoption. And when we talk about biological families versus the adoptive families, it was a very touching piece for William to acknowledge, like you said, that somebody else did raise him and he can't take ownership of the person who Randall has come to be, but he's thankful for that. Again, this is where it's good to get an adoptee perspective or a biological parent perspective to understand, is that a feeling that many people have, like thankful to the person who's raised their child once they're back into reunion? It has to be some really complex feelings there. Yeah. And we saw the thankful piece. We haven't seen the other piece of that, which is maybe the anxiety and the regret piece of that too.
Right. And keep in mind that at the beginning of the show, we drop in on Randall in search for reunion, in search of his dad. And it's clear that he's angry and he's anxious about it and that there's this missing piece and he's afraid that he's going to be rejected and all of those kinds of complicated things. And so, of course, at the time, we also don't know that William has been in touch with Rebecca.
And it's a very limited in touch too. So it's not as though William has really gotten status updates about how Randall is doing and what's going on in his life. I think he might have gotten 1 or 2 letters from Rebecca. I'm still interested in what other feelings William had about, one, giving his child away, realizing that this child is being raised by somebody else, and then what that looks like at the end.
So back to our story, we see William, of course, as we mentioned before, is a true artist. He's a poet, he's a composer. And we come to this scene where his band, he's written a piece for the band, and we know that it's a turning point. It seems like the band is about to make a big break, but he ends up going to be with his mother, who is ill, and he goes to take care of her because, again, he's a mama's boy and he's a good guy. And it's there that he meets Randall's mother on the bus. And we see that, that picks up with some flashbacks that we've seen earlier. We see that she and William fall deeply in love. William's mother declines, and eventually the girlfriend starts hanging out with the wrong crowd as William is taking care of his mother. And then I guess after William's mother passes away, William joins the girlfriend and they end up kind of going down the round path and getting addicted to drugs. It's pretty sad.
It is sad. There's a couple of things there. One, when you go back to talking about his life in Memphis, he is in a band with his cousin, Ricky. Mm-hmm. And Ricky is probably not the best dude to hang out with, but Ricky believes in William's talents. And like you said, he supports him. And that's how the band gets to a point where they're about to make this breakaway. And William leaves the band right at that point, maybe as they're about to become stars.
Right.
There's a break right there between William and his cousin. They had been together for so long, and then William leaves. And so it's also a story about the people that you leave behind mm-hmm. and what happens to them. And then William's I guess they're in Philadelphia. Is that where they are? And the other cool part is that William meets his lady, Laura, mm-hmm. and she's beautiful. And as part of their relationship, Laura becomes friends with his mother, and she begins to take care of his mother. And it's just a nice thing to see Black families taking care of each other. It goes in the face of sometimes what we see that, we don't want to take care of each other, but we do. That's part of her assimilation to the family, is because she's taking care of the mom, and she's, while William is doing some other things.
Right. So William begins showing Randall around town, and Randall begins meeting family. And it's very clear that this is like missing pieces are falling into place. He's feeling very connected. He's eager to meet and understand family connections. Like, so when his father goes to meet Ricky in the bar, like Randall keeps interrupting, like, so does that mean that you're my cousin? So exactly how does this?
Yeah. What's the connection here?
What's the connection here? And it's just so funny. It's really quite precious. These family connections broaden, and he's understanding who his cousins are. He's also very conscious about having been raised around white people and what that makes his celebration looks like.
It looks different than the way his cousins celebrate, because Randall gets up and says, you get a cousin, everybody get a cousin, in Oprah fashion. Right. Cousins are like, this is not the time or place for all that. And Randall says, I'm sorry, I was raised by white people. And it's almost like everybody's like, oh, okay.
That explains.
Yeah, okay. We'll let you pass with that one.
It was just really funny because the celebration is different. And as soon as he kind of makes that, I guess, admission, and they were like, oh, okay, well, we've seen that. Now we understand that. Okay.
Okay. But you go ahead and do that robot if you want to.
Right. Do you. So, Randall is delighted. I mean, he is like having the time of his life, finally happy to see and meet his people. Like he's found his people. So he calls Beth and he's like, I've met 18 cousins. And it's also clear that William is very happy as well. He is like playing the piano and he's jamming and they're just so happy. And it's very clear that they are happy together. This is a quintessential father-son moment. Like it's not just the road trip, but it's every individual little element of the road trip is about them.
And it's that connection to your family. It has to be like, I found this missing piece. Right. I mean, I found my father, but then I also found all these other people who I have connections to, and that I look like, and that I have a nose like this person, I have eyes like this person, or my voice sounds like this person, or my hair looks like this person. there's a reason why he's so exuberant about this. Just to be able to see what you look like on the face of somebody else is just
Right.
amazing.
Right. I was waiting for him to to start asking like these 18 cousins, can you roll your tongue?
Yeah. How alike are we?
Because I hear that that's a genetic thing. It's just beautiful because you see that those pieces are kind of falling into place. So, but we also quickly learn, or it really was foreshadowed the entire episode, but this trip really has allowed William to kind of settle his affairs. You know, he's gone back to the home he grew up in. He's gone back to his favorite places. He reconnects with his family. He has a chance to apologize to Ricky for leaving him when the band was about to get hot. The scene where they first get together, you know, Ricky is all hot and everything, but that grudge is really truly long gone. He understands, but William gets to spend this quality time with his son and with his friends and his family, and he helps Randall make that connection, that really important connection.
I really didn't think about it until you just said that. It's almost like that is his gift to Randall.
It is.
He wasn't able to raise him, but I can give you this last thing, this family that you've been looking for. Doesn't mean that overshadows the family that raised him, but I can give you this other piece of you that you were seeking, even though I know I'm going to be gone.
Right. You know, I think that their purposes for taking this trip, I don't think that Randall and William were ever truly on the same page.
No, absolutely not.
Taking this trip.
Absolutely not. William had a whole plan in his head what he wanted to do.
Right. William was like, you know what? I'm going home to die. I'm going home to die. And Randall is like, we're going on a road trip. I'm going on the road trip with my daddy.
Yes.
So, you know, in the end, it is clear that William is close to death, and Randall ends up taking him to the hospital the day after they have this big party at the bar. And he asked the doctor if they can make arrangements to fly William back to New York or get Beth and the kids to Memphis. And the doctor is looking at him like, dude, we're tick-tock, the hours. This is an hour kind of situation. The doctor doesn't understand how William actually managed to make the trip at all. And it really begins to dawn on Randall that, yeah, this was his father's last hurrah. William tells Randall that he's afraid, and Randall responds by doing what Jack had always done for him, by putting his hands on his face and telling him to just breathe. William, throughout the episode, also gives Randall advice about rolling down the windows, turning the music up, and just living and not being so uptight. But in those final moments, Randall has his hands on William's face and is telling him to breathe. And they stay that way until William takes his last breath. And it just, this is when, if you were watching it live, social media just lit up with people bawling.
Yeah, because you realize that this was really a sacrifice. This is all William could give. He also gives Randall a book of poems that he had written for him. And I just think all of the thoughts that had went into this was really a beautiful thing. And he tells Randall that he is his beautiful boy, his son, and that he had the two very best things, the person at the beginning of his life, his mother, and the person at the very end, his son. And what more could he ask for? Even though the rest of the in-between parts weren't that great, but he had a great beginning and a great end. And how beautiful that is.
It was just a really amazing episode. I think every episode of this show has been really fantastic, but this one, man, this better get them an Emmy nod. I'm not playing with them.
Yeah. And then, William has to drive home by himself.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was difficult to watch, that you had planned for this trip and now you're going home by yourself. He has the toys that William found, his toys from his childhood. He has the poems on the front seat, but there's no William there. Yeah. And he finally does what his father tells him, which is roll the window down and turn the music up and remembers. At least he had that. I kind of was mad, though. I was mad at Rebecca because he could have had more. And, we haven't touched back on what happened with Randall and Rebecca's relationship. Randall went to Rebecca's house and like, look, I understand and we cool. Maybe we will be cool later, and then we haven't seen them together anymore.
Right.
And so I wonder how this is going to play out, because I only had 3 months, 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I could have
Mm-hmm.
had years.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something we as adoptive parents have to deal with too. The decisions that we make,
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes we justify for the safety of our children, for the sake of us not being uncomfortable, that eventually those decisions will come home for us to deal with. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the truth 90% of the time comes to light, right? And, I do think that there will be a lot of grief to deal with. There's a lot of grief in the show anyway, but I think that there will be even more now with William gone. Randall has lost 2 fathers. He lost Jack, and now he's lost Randall. It's going to be interesting to see how his siblings react to that. Will they just be like, oh, okay, well, sucks to be you?
I don't think they're going to react at all. I mean, they'll react in the typical way that somebody reacts to somebody who had a family member die.
Right. But they're going to post on Facebook, I'm so sorry for your loss. Condolences.
Yeah. I'll give you a hug. I'll come. Yeah.
But praying for you, air quotes.
I don't think they ever really understood the importance of Randall finding William.
Yeah.
They didn't have a family discussion about it. I don't see that much discussion with Randall about it. And of course, the relationships between the Bios and Randall is always kind of strange anyway.
Right.
But I can't see them understanding the impact of this.
Right. So I do think that the setup is, going into season 2. Of course, the show has been renewed, but going into season 2, I think that there's going to be, there's certainly going to be a lot more grief, but kind of understanding how Randall deals with the loss of his biological father, what that means for him and his family, and what does that mean for the future of his relationship with Rebecca, especially. It's funny because we talked in the last episode that Kevin has finally kind of got okay with Miguel. Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Miguel.
Right. Mm-hmm. Poor Miguel. But Randall is like, oh yeah, and you too, Winona. Like,
yeah. I don't know if Kevin actually got okay with Miguel or if he just used Miguel for what he needed at the time.
So this is true. So, I mean, I look forward, of course, to seeing what happens next. Yeah.
It was a beautiful episode. If you haven't seen it and you just listen to the recap, we suggest you get on Hulu and get you some. Sit there with your Kleenex next to you.
Yeah.
Because it is sad, but it's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. It's beautifully arranged. And I think anybody who has dealt with a parent that has left would be able to relate.
Yes. And I will say as an aside, I sat down to watch it a second time, and Hope sat down next to me. She eventually kind of failed, but this is something that we've been through, or rather she's been through. And so sitting down and unpacking what that feels like is tough. And I'm hopeful that for us, this episode will be another framework for us to kind of talk about her emotions around losing a parent, because it's a tough thing for anybody. And I think it's an especially tough thing for adoptees in reunion.
And honestly, it convicted me as an adoptive parent. If you listen to our podcast, you know that I've been struggling a little bit, and actually just received an email from someone who's going through the same thing about, should I reach out to my child's biological family and at least let them know where she is or how she's doing and things like that. And so it convicted me, because we think we have so much time.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Tomorrow's not promised.
And we have no idea what is going on with the biological family and what a difference it would make to just take the time to reach out, what that could do for your child. So just something to think about.
Something to think about. So this has been our recap of This Is Us, episode 16, Memphis. Be sure to check out our most recent episode of Add Water and Stir on Black History Month that we just released recently. Let us know what you think about our recaps and our digests. So, Mimi, where can they find you in the E-Streets?
You can find me on my blog, MimiRobinsonOnline.com, or you can find me on Twitter at MimiComplex.
You can find me at adoptiveblackmom.com, on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest at Adoptive Black Mom. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.